Port is a set of singular lines that are used by the CPU to communicate with the peripheral devices like keyboard, mouse, printers, modem, etc. Data transfer takes place between the peripheral devices and the CPU through these ports.
In computing, a serial port is a serial communication physical interface through which information transfers in or out one bit at a time. A serial port uses RS-232 standard for transfer of information, may use a two-way communication with three separate wires to receive, to send, and a common signal ground wire. RS-232 standard. In telecommunications, RS-232 is a standard for serial binary single-ended data and control signals connecting between a DTE and a DCE. Reasons of becoming obsolete: the low transmission speed, large voltage swing, large standard connectors, single-ended signaling referred to a common signal ground limits the noise immunity and transmission distance. RS-232 data transmission. Data is transmitted serially in one direction over a pair of wires. Data going out is labeled TX, indicating transmission, while data coming in is labeled RX, indicating reception. To create a two-way communication system, a minimum of three wires are needed: TX, RX and ground. Crossing over TX and RX between the two systems lets each unit talk to the opposite one. Each byte can be transmitted at any time. The transmitted byte is not synchronized with the receiver. It is an asynchronous protocol, that is, there is no clock signal. For this reason, software at each end of the communication link must be set up exactly the same so that each serial decoder chip can decode the serial data stream. This is a typical RS-232 connector. 25-pin D connectors. Male D-type connector having 9 pins. Serial port configuration. Notation. Applications: printers, networking, mouse, serial keyboards, dial-up modems. The ports: parallel port, USB, firewire. Parallel port. In computing, a parallel port is a parallel communication physical interface. It is a 25-pin female connector used for connecting various peripherals. Now obsolete, has been replaced by USB. It is also known as a printer port or Centronics port. Parallel port comparison. Serial port, parallel port. Serial port is a male connector, whereas parallel port is a female connector. Serial port, maximum 3 transmission lines needed. In a parallel port, more number of lines are needed. Serial ports are slower compared to parallel ports. USB is an industry standard developed in the mid-1900s that defines the cables, connectors and communications protocols used in a bus for connection, communication and power supply between computers and electronic devices. 3 versions of the USB port have been released till date. USB 1.0, released in January 1996, specified data rates of 1.5 megabytes per second and 12 megabytes at full bandwidth. USB 2.0, released in April 2000, added higher maximum signaling rate of 480 megabytes per second. USB 3.0 was released in November 2008. The standard specifies a maximum transmission speed of up to 5 gigabits per second or 625 megabytes per second, which is more than 10 times as fast as USB 2.0. In a USB, up to 127 devices can be connected to the host directly or by the way of USB hubs. Individual USB cables up to 5 meters in length, low power devices can draw their power directly from the bus. Serial ports in Linux. While tele-type terminals were used, the TTY command output was not shown on a display, but printed on a printer that was connected to the tele-type machine, referred to as TTY, display serial support.
USB, standing for Universal Serial Bus, has replaced both serial and parallel ports and is so common these days that almost all the external devices are connected to the computer or laptop via USB, whether it be a mouse, a keyboard, a printer, an external drive, and what not. It uses asynchronous communication and consists of a host device and multiple peripheral devices. Host is a type A receptacle and other peripheral devices are different types of type B receptacle. USB on the go or USB OTG, commonly found in mobile phones, can act both as a host and as a peripheral device. This can allow us to connect mobile phone to the computer to access phone storage and also to connect an external USB pen drive to the mobile phone to access pen drive's content. In general, USB consists of 4 wires, 2 for power and 2 for communication. Although at a time 127 devices can be connected to a host, but the constraint is that the length of the cable that cannot exceed 5 meters. To tackle this, USB hubs can be connected in between. As we can see, with each generation of USB, data transfer rates has been significantly increased. The latest standard is USB 3.0, offering a data rate of up to 400 Mbps.
Serial port Linux Minicom. Minicom serial port communication. Install $sudo apt-get install Minicom. Setup $Minicom dash.
Okay, so now time has come to test yourself. Here is a short quiz for you to see how much have you learned in this lecture. The first question is, why can DVDs and Blu-rays store more data than CDs? Is there a difference in the data rate between PCI, PCI-X and PCI Express? If yes, then approximately how much? Typically, how much power in watts does a power supply supply? Why is red LED light used in optical mouse? And why is no other color used? What are the reasons of RS-232 becoming obsolete? What does serial port configuration 19200-8E0 signify? Basically, what does each entity or part of this configuration signify? What are tools of communication for serial ports in Linux and Windows available? What is the difference between serial and parallel ports? What is USB OTG? Where is it used and how is it used? What are the wires in USB? Basically, what different type of wires are present in a USB cable? Think about answers for these questions for a moment. If you do not know any answer, kindly check back in the video. All have been covered in this lecture. Now let's proceed to the summary to summarize whatever we have learned in this lecture. We started with CD compact disc and we learned that it has a capacity of about 700 MB and store data in forms of bits and LANs. We learned that bits and LANs directly do not correspond to zeros and ones, but it is a transition from bit to LAN or LAN to bit that corresponds to 1, and no transition corresponds to a 0. DVDs and Blu-ray discs have smaller pits and smaller distance between them. They require laser of smaller wavelength to be read or written, and that is the reason why a Blu-ray disc is called a Blu-ray disc, because it uses a blue wavelength. It uses a blue laser which has got a smaller wavelength so that it can read more data. Expansion cards or adapters are installed on PCI bus. In laptops, mini PCI used. PCI Express is faster than PCI-X, which is indeed faster than PCI. Power supply unit is required to supply DC voltage to computer. The power brick does this work for a laptop. LCD displays, that is liquefied crystal display, have replaced CRT, the cathode ray tube displays. Capacitive touchscreen is more sensitive than resistive ones, but doesn't work with a stylus unless a special capacitive stylus is used. Capacitive touchscreens rely on detecting the ions or the charge in our fingers. optical mouse uses camera to sense motion. Data transfer in RS-232 serial ports, which are now obsolete, is serial and asynchronous, that is no clock, and is in one direction only. 9-pin DB9 connector used. Parallel port, which is also now obsolete and has been replaced by USB, used to use a 25-pin female connector and was mostly used to connect printers. Almost all devices are now connected through USB, which uses asynchronous communication and consists of a host and downstream multiple devices. Rather, up to 127 devices can be connected to one host. That's a lot of devices. Thank you for watching this video.